Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Tai Chi lesson. Last week we completed the routine for a fair part of it that allows you a really nice foundation to develop your positional awarenesses, challenge your coordination a little bit, and really feel like you can close the loop really well. Before adding any more forms into the routine, we should really try to refine the forms we have already learned. That being said, I want to kind of approach them a little differently each way. Really making sure we're initiating our movements the way they are designed to be, both biomechanically and traditionally. It's real easy just to kind of muscle through each of the forms and just string them together and complete the sequence. But there's a lot of subtle details that come along as we go. So I want to really start paying some attention to some of those finer details that challenge your performance and understanding of each movement a little more. The opening movement really is a nice sink and sit and stand component to it. Now I'm sitting down for now, but as we come up, there should be a little pop of the chest on the lift and a little bit of a sink on the lower. You can kind of think of it as a power up, as well as what they call swallowing your core, which isn't necessarily just tensing up the abdominal muscles and the muscles of the core and trunk, but pushing them deep in, kind of like a little bit of a crunch, getting them to move back towards the spine itself. And that's a little detail that can come along. If you watch any videos or anyone that's really developed mastery of a Tai Chi sequence, you'll notice there is a lot of core activation and trunk mobility that initiates and pulls the arms through the sequence. There's also a lot of development of what's known as spiral energy in Tai Chi performance. And that spiral energy really brings itself apparent in other styles, not necessarily the Yang Sun style routine we've been practicing, but has a much larger presence in like Chen style, quite a bit of Yang, and we really see a lot of it in the finish of waving hands like clouds, where the hand finishes and you get that rotation out and then you come back in underneath to go to the other side. That little flick of the wrist is that spiral energy leading you along the way. There's a philosophy in Tai Chi practice that there are no straight lines and there are curved lines. And that's largely true. Even if you're not really thinking about it much, waving in hands like clouds, it's a curved line because there's rotation of the body. So those little elements really allow you to expand on your practice. And it goes back to the expression of it from previous lessons, where you don't have to have a lot of forms to practice Tai Chi, but you have to have a really good understanding of some forms to really reap the benefits of it. And you don't have to be a master of everything, just a couple of things. So when we do the opening, and we'll come back a bit to that first movement, you have the lift of the chest and the arms will follow it, and you have a dip of the chest and it kind of comes down. Think like a bed sheet on a clothesline when the wind blows through it. It's kind of a wavy action. From a side profile, now that's pretty exaggerated, but it's there when you're taking it easy. and it kind of flows and feeds in. Now you don't want to ever over exaggerate anything because that makes it easier for you to be taken off balance. But engaging it allows you to have more body control, which could give you greater force on exertion. So when you're practicing that, think about letting it ride along. And, you're bringing everything to and from, towards you or pushing away from you. But you can use all your muscles to help achieve that. And you might develop some soreness because you can really start using smaller, less engaged muscles more frequently. And like any muscle you don't use a lot, you start using it a bit more than usual, you'll notice it. So let's take the opening movement and kind of think about what the body does as we go through it. I'll do a little bit of it sitting down, and then we'll take a piece of it into standing. And I wrote that into opening and closing hands. And that extension and flexion of the body fits in with the breath and can promote the diaphragmatic or Dantian breathing we talked a little bit about in the basics. All of which pull everything together. Now be careful about forcing synchronizing the breath and your movement, because if you're not accustomed to that, you can make yourself lightheaded, which could increase your risk of losing balance. So only practice that as you're in a safe position to do so, and with as little extra components as possible to help build up a familiarity for it and allow your body to get accustomed to that kind of approach. At the end of the day, I want you to be safe while being mobile and developing these skills. And one of the rules we hold important in our practice is comfort and not forcing anything to occur. So moving into a little bit more of pulling in some of the finer details of our practice. From the side profile, we have that up and down with the body. And all the while I'm maintaining that contact of my tongue on the roof of my mouth, completing that little piece of the puzzle also. From the back on, you'll notice with the open and closed hands how much it is back driven and not arm driven. And with that, it's contraction of the back and then release of that tension that lets the hands travel back towards each other. Again, got the trunk involved with that also to help facilitate it along. Our movements really are driven from the feet through the body and they finish in the hand. The hand doesn't truly lead through the movements. So you want to make sure you give yourself a chance to feel what it's like to drive that action from the feet. And that's very prominent in waving hands in clouds and even the single whip to a degree. But as you see, as I do this, when I push through my foot where my body goes. And when it's gone, where does it return to? Same thing going from the other side. There's a little bit of body in this, but really it's all coming out of this leg for that drive action. And so if we're in our waving hands like clouds, I'm driving through the leg, allowing the hand to travel, and when I rotate it out, it begins the return. So really, the arms just ride the energy, completing the cycle there. And you can practice that if you have a nice smooth, this is a handy dandy little footstool that we use as a chair at our bathroom sink, that's smooth on top. And I can push myself side to side with a little bit of engagement in my core for that rotation. But really, it's all out of the feet. And you can play around with it. Feel what driving through the foot feels like for that turn. And get comfortable with it, because then you can take it in and start to apply it to your routine or to your practice. If you've been practicing or have wondered about it in your practice, it's perfectly okay to take out one piece of it and just practice that one piece. That's how a lot of the traditional teaching is done, is one section until you get it absolutely right to the next section. But I do not hold any true traditional lineage or anything like that to it. But that doesn't mean you can't pay respect to that either. So pull a piece out of it that you are comfortable with and feel like you have really good, and start to really think about some of the other elements involved in it. Where are your fingers? How are your hands held? Are they high enough? Are you just kind of here? Can you start incorporating a little more height? Do you lock your fingers totally out? They should have a nice little bit of a curvature to them and be relaxed. Not necessarily this relaxed, but a nice middle spot. That way you can, start bringing in other pieces. I have a tendency to fan my hands on the out, and I'm really trying to make sure I maintain wherever they start is where they finish, and there's not deviation along the way. There's no real good or bad in your practice. There's always trying to make it better the next time you practice. And that's really where I would like your attention to be. Do it now, and then think back to how it was done before. Really allow yourself a chance to see where your progress has come from. You've been doing this for quite a while through the videos and in the gym, really. So you should be able to feel a difference now and think back to how you did do it to what it feels like today. There should be difference there. You should feel more smooth, more confident in it, and feel like you're ready to add a new level of challenge. So I'm going to take my stool away and take it into standing and bring a few more pieces together. So taking it in, starting with our feet, that nice 45, heels more or less touching, the knees are lightly bent. You should feel stable here. Don't feel stable here, start practicing this stance. If you've been starting from this position, get a little closer to it, and a little closer still. Feel that control. You don't have to be locked out like a board to maintain your balance, because even then your balance is more susceptible to being lost. Be relaxed. Be ready for whatever the environment provides you. And you get that little crunch with the knee bend as you bring it down. And you can even just go back and forth. Getting familiar with how that feels. Pulling in all those extra details. And if you do that long enough, you'll notice your thighs will begin to burn. Because even though you're not squatting far, it is just enough to get those muscles working again and again and again, building up that endurance and that strength. And as I come down and I kind of let my trunk begin to lead and store up that energy like a rubber band, I pull it up. Send it down. And just build on it each time. The pelvis should be tilted back a little bit, like you're trying to tuck your tailbone underneath you. And that is a very difficult detail to pull away, especially with our Western posture that happens from the way we ride in cars, sit on couches, work in the office, years and years and years of how we've done things. It's hard to keep that tucked underneath, and that's really going to engage a lot of these muscles. So you can even just start by trying to hold that still and keep it tucked up underneath you as you go. And feel it when you lose it. You may not even notice you lost it, and you'll go, oh, I need to keep that tucked in, and then pull it in again. A good time to practice that is in the open and closing hands, trying to keep it pulled in, and that soft squat while you do it. Trying to hold it in, really engaging this region, engages the glutes as well, really stabilizing and supporting that pelvis, which is where a lot of our balance begins. It's your foundation, because everything attaches here. The body attaches here, the legs meet the body here. This is where everything is. Where a lot of our power comes from too. So from jumping and things like that, if you have everything lined up in the right place, your explosiveness really will step up and ramp up. So if you have a hard time jumping, or even a little hop, standing up from sitting down, it can all come from here and the loss of directional force when you apply the muscles. So let's start reining that in. Being aware of where does our force go when we apply the muscle. Tai Chi really helps pull all that together, as you've heard me talk many times. It's about how you're doing the movements, not necessarily the movement itself. That does have importance, but when you're learning it, how are you doing it? What are you feeling when you perform it? That's where your attention should go. That way when you do practice it, you can bring all the pieces together. So let's take it through from the beginning to the single whip, really paying attention to what does the pelvis do? What does the core do, or the chest and body do when we go to raise the hands or separate them out? are we driving from one foot onto the other when we do the whip? Start pulling in those small details, letting us feel when we engage them, how does it change? What change do you notice? Pausing that final hold, where do you feel the work is at? When your foot goes out, do you feel like your supporting leg or your full leg has complete control of the body? If not, at what point do you lose it? Is it further than when you started? Are you taking a step now? Whereas before you're largely just standing still. Allow yourself to see and feel those improvements. That lets you know how much you can start adding to continue to build. So we'll do it again. And incorporating the pauses as we've done before, you can really let yourself have a moment here. Is your pelvis tucked? Is your core storing up to lead the arms up? Are you about to pull down to drive the hands back down? Can you stand on one foot this long? Can you raise it? This is a very common form for many other forms and other styles. On one foot, raising the knee, you can have one hand up, getting ready for a heel kick, which my heel kick is very low to the ground because my hamstrings are like iron cables. But being able to come here allows for that soft step forwards. Just trying to see how long you can hold this, build strength through this region here. Preparing you for having to take a high step. Trying to step over anything, like a bathtub. They all fit in. Pushing from the back foot onto the left foot here. It's a little bit of a modified bow stance to here. Feel that push onto the left foot, back onto the right foot, onto the left foot, onto the right foot. Pushing the foot into the floor. Letting that force travel from one hip to the next. Directing the movement through the core. adding in the rotation of the waist a bit, even though it really still comes largely from the hips. Take a step over to stay in the frame for you. My feet are a bit wide, so I'm going to step back a bit. But my hand and my belly button are connected, they're tethered. So one doesn't leave the other. One directs the other. But I'm pushing more through my feet than I am just turning my body. Driving that force from one side to the other. Allowing the energy to take the arm in the direction I wish it to go. Sinking in those details to the point it starts to look like this. Letting that drive happen. And it takes a little practice to get a more narrow base and to push one foot to take the body to the next foot. It's almost like a dance. And if your balance doesn't allow you to begin that standing up, again, sitting down. Pushing one foot into the floor, trying to drive it through the middle of the foot or the heel so the right muscle actions are occurring and you're not just pushing through the calf the whole time. It's the whole leg that drives that force. So you get it here. Letting my eyes follow my palm, but don't tunnel vision on the palm because then you lose your periphery. Try to have eyes on the palm, but be aware of what's around you. Helps to develop that awareness of obstacles nearby when you are walking around. So it's really expanding your ability to take in more information, which we tend to lose when we get tired or we're stressed We're trying to do a lot more things at one time to make up for not having the energy to do it earlier or later on. But we want to make sure we're staying safe while we're doing everything. How does it feel? Taking a moment to really reconnect. Pushing through the foot. And to the other foot. Practicing that awareness of those other details. Making it your own. You know, the forms are there to guide and structure. But each one of you being different gives a little different element to it. What do you notice that I may not notice? Be honest with your feelings. Your control of it. It's what keeps you safe. It's also what makes you feel like you're still in control. Right now we could all use that feeling a little bit more. Taking those good breaths, making sure we're breathing deeply, allowing everything to fill up and expand. Keeping everything flexible on the inside, while being rigid and supportive, much like bamboo. Well, let's take it through the routine for what we've done. Allowing ourselves to bring in those little elements. Pick one to pay attention to. There's many to choose from. Start with one. When you get good at that one, add in the next one. I'm going to do it sitting down to allow myself a little more awareness here and of what the tongue does in the mouth. Trying to keep that connection strong. Take that good breath again, really allowing yourself to visualize and set in the elements you're incorporating. And begin. What did you notice in your practice when you put your attention on to one of the other details? Did you speed up? Did you slow down? Did you not move as far as you typically would? Or did you find yourself moving further? By really taking that step back and really assessing how it went when you added a new piece, lets you know how well you incorporated that new piece. I noticed in the second series of Waving Hands in Clouds, I felt like I sped up, trying to be more aware of what was happening here and here. So, it just means there's a little more practice to be done. Don't sacrifice one thing to incorporate something else. Add them together. Maintain them together. Continue your practice to help hold those pieces in. Let's do it again. Trying to maintain what we had with the addition of the new. How was that? Was it better the second time after having a moment to really reflect on how you did? Still felt like I was faster in the first one that time, but slowed down better for the second. It's a good way to help really reflect on where's your mind at in your practice. Are you allowing yourself to have a moment to just be in the one moment? I encourage you to try to find it. That way you can help ease the extra stresses. Help calm those symptoms that seem to ramp up when you are stressed or worried. Take charge of your situation again. Have that good breath and really reflect on it. What does it feel like to add in a new piece? What new challenges stand out? Keep growing and moving forwards. Have another good clearing breath. Do it again. We'll have one more practice. I'm going to do this one standing up, and then we'll begin and take it forwards. We'll go through the full routine that we've developed, maintaining as much control as we can, being mindful of the new elements that we discussed today. Always trying to pull everything forwards, adding a new layer of control to how we do our routine and how we move our bodies. Always letting our comfort dictate how the movement goes, and focusing on keeping the movement as smooth as we can. Have that good clearing breath. Giving ourselves a chance to really reflect on what we've learned, where our strengths are, and an area to continue to develop. Inhaling on the lift, we'll begin. How did that feel compared to your previous practices this lesson? Did you feel like you had more control over the entire routine? More stable and smooth? I truly hope so. Thank you for joining me for today's lesson. I appreciate your time and your willingness to come along and practice your Tai Chi with me. Continue to develop the areas you see that stand out. Add in each detail if you feel like it is too much. Remove that detail and go back to mastering what you've been more comfortable with. And as you feel like you're better prepared, try to incorporate it again and see how it feels. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your day and weekend. I'll see you soon. Thank you.